Hey, what's up everybody? This is Vincent Sun, the Wandering Warrior. So, I experienced Vietnamese traditional archery, and I learned about the story behind the Dan Nong Imperial Citadel. Now, you know me. Aside from wrestling, kung fu, and archery, I like clubs and blades. So I had to go learn about Vietnamese swords. We all know about America's war with Vietnam, so let's go further back in time. Further back. Whoa, that's too far back. Okay. Trent Dynasty, Chen, Tai Sun, maybe Nguyen era. Unfortunately, even when they're not heavily corroded, there's not that much information on these blades here at the Vietnamese Military History Museum. I had to go find somebody who could help me bring them to life. And I found him.
Chào các bạn nhé, mình là Nguyễn Duy, thợ rèn của Việt Nam. Mong các bạn ủng hộ những sản phẩm của Việt Nam mình nhé. Cảm ơn các bạn.
A hard-working, detail-oriented, and sincere man. Aside from the two Japanese antiques and the Tang Dao reproduction there, Mr. Nguyễn Duy made all the rest. While he can make Japanese and Chinese swords as well, his passion is in making and promoting Vietnamese swords. Check that out. Different styles, different levels of decoration, but all absolutely beautiful. So go look up ZWE. They're making really good stuff. Yeah, I myself definitely intend to commission from ZWE. Whoa. Before you go, please like, share, subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'm able to go to different places and do this stuff with my martial arts career because of you guys. So, thank you. Now for you guys staying longer, let's take a moment to analyze some antique Vietnamese swords so we can properly appreciate them and how they show Vietnam's history. Before you guys hit up Mr. Nguyen Duy, I want you guys to have some basic knowledge about Vietnamese swords. Now, nothing is better for study than the antiques. However, with all the wars and colonization, many of Vietnam's finest examples that survive are actually found in private collections outside of the country. We are going to go to my buddy Peter Decker's website, Mandarin Mansion. Peter has worked hard to make his website an open resource for all weapon enthusiasts and historians, and is deep into the research himself. If you're into buying antique swords, by the way, you'll love his website. So first off, we have classic Vietnamese sabers, Dao or Gươm. As with Korea, Ryukyu, and Japan, the Vietnamese have been heavily influenced and shaped by the Sinitic civilization of the Han Chinese people. The earliest known Viet Dao are Sun-Mai straight, ring-pommeled Dao made of bronze, and later of iron and steel. As we get into the medieval era, we start to see some curvature, and if I'm not mistaken, by about the 1400s, we start to see designs that are clearly Vietnamese, though with similarities to some Chinese designs. So Vietnamese Dao or Gươm have some features that remind us of Chinese sabers, Dao. They both come in straight grip and curved grip varieties, and the overall layout is similar. However, The materials and the cross sections of the handles can be quite different. The affixing of the tang to the hilt is usually done differently, and the details of the blade geometry are distinct. As you saw earlier, Nguyễn Duy made a really good reproduction of this particular style. This seems to be very typical in the Dongkin area. There's even some with a wider chopping blade, but with very similar handle and fittings. Unlike Chinese Dao, which tend to have grip wrapping on the handle, the Vietnamese sabers of the time have handles made of wood or buffalo horn that are exposed, and oftentimes metal rings to help with their grip. These Dao resemble almost like Vietnamese versions of Daab or Daab blades. See, the Chinese weren't the only influence on the Vietnamese. The Kiếm Vietnamese nation is actually surrounded by many other groups. They warred with the Khmer, the Champa, Lan Xang, Siam, today's Thailand, and so some Vietnamese used their own version of the Southeast Asian family of Daab, Dav, Da type blades. These kind of blades within today's Vietnam tend to have their own look and design when compared to the better known examples of Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar. Duy is very good at making these sort of Vietnamese Da. Additionally, as the Vietnamese conquered southwards and absorbed more peoples into their state, the blades of the Cham, the Central Highlands, and the Mekong River areas started to have their influence. Cham swords often have this elegant curve and brass or bronze rings around the handle. They and the Thuong people, who the French call Montagnards or Highlanders, they contributed to the Tay Son military, and so these metal-hilted Dao are very common in that era. This one seems to have almost like a Japanese-style zuba. And for several decades, towards the end of the 1500s and into the 1600s, Japanese traders and mercenaries were very, very active in Taiwan, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. Alright, next up are two-handers, known as Dao Trung. So up until now, we've been looking at single-handed swords, which would have been used by themselves in some situations, or with a shield, which is more practical on the battlefield. But the Vietnamese also had two-handed swords. These Dao Trung are very similar to Chinese Da Dao, Da Kan Dao, or Po Dao, and they likely have the same origin in the southern Song dynasty's military technology. During that time, chopping blades with ring pommels were mass-produced for the Chinese and non-Chinese soldiers fighting for the Song dynasty against the Mongolian Empire. These designs survived on the folk level and developed into many regional varieties, and they never stopped being popular in what is today's southern China and Vietnam. You'll notice that this Vietnamese example has a narrow base and flares dramatically, and the handle is wrapped in rattan. This is very typical of the Vietnamese style. This one has a blade that's more like the Chinese style, with less of the flare. However, the grip is very much the Vietnamese style. Next up, these are quite interesting. They likely stem from the same two-handed Dao resurgence that the Ming dynasty had. Sino-Japanese pirates were raiding the Ming dynasty, and their odachi greatly impressed the Chinese coastal citizens and military men alike. The Chinese quickly adopted this odachi design, indigenized production, and started developing their own styles of this kind of two-hander. The Vietnamese also had these, but with their own aesthetics, typically with fittings and ergonomics that are distinct from the Chinese. Sino-Viet Blades, Trung-Việt. So here we see a spread of weapons that are shared across northern Vietnam over to Guangdong, land of the Yue Chinese or Cantonese, and over to Hokkien, Fujian province, land of the Mi. Between them are the Hakka and the Shi people up in the hills, and once upon a time there were many Tanka boat people. People in this region, be they Viet, Sinitic, or otherwise, tend to share similar weapons. The Vietnamese have their own version of this butterfly sword, shield knife, and long fighting knife that was also heavily used by the Cantonese and the Hokkien people. Kiếm, swords. As with China, the double-edged sword hasn't been the main battlefield sidearm since ancient times. However, it can still be an excellent weapon for self-defense or dueling. As you can see with these examples, they're very ornate and clearly status symbols. The Vietnamese skill with the mother-of-pearl inlay is truly amazing. Plainer ones for battle do exist, but unfortunately not many remain. It's the survivor bias of antiques. People tend to save and collect the nicer stuff. Franco-Vietnamese Saber, Pháp-Việt. The Nguyen dynasty was actually very proactive in enlisting European assistance with military technology. They imported a lot of guns as well as having indigenous production. So late Nguyen sabers reflect this increased European influence. Some of these are real battle-ready sabers, and others are clearly ceremonial status symbols. Again, the mother-of-pearl inlay is incredible. As we know, eventually the Nguyen dynasty fell behind and the French were able to coerce, subvert, and take over Vietnam. This has been a quick overview, and it is missing a few key blade styles, but I hope it gives you the ability to appreciate the lethality, the craftsmanship, and the history behind Vietnamese swords. This is a field of study in martial arts that is in dire need of proper attention and practice. Now, with the better ability to appreciate Vietnamese swords, go to the ZWE website and check it out. Guys, these are the people who have been making the beautiful Vietnamese swords and horn bows that I've been showing y'all. So, thank you for joining me on my journey. I salute yours.